My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is Local Edition. We thank you for joining us. Our guest is Anthony Adams. Anthony is a member of the California State Assembly. And sir, I am glad you were here. We know that Sacramento, objectively, is having some real difficulties. Some are calling it totally dysfunctional. Do you believe Sacramento is dysfunctional?
Absolutely not. Sacramento is really a collection of people who can and should take a leadership position and really establish the kind of priorities that we need to establish if we're going to make hard decisions. And that's all it really is. It's about making hard decisions. Sacramento right now has a dearth of people who are willing to step up and make difficult decisions.
I want to talk to you about those people because I interview a lot of them, and I got to tell you, most of you are pretty darn smart. You're interested, you're interesting, you're there for the right reasons. Yet you're going to be kicked out in a couple of years because of term limits. And so I want to address the issue of reform. You know, there are no term limits for orthodontists, for trash collectors. Is it time to look at term limit reform?
I absolutely disagree with the idea of term limits. I think that the founding fathers spoke to this issue at great length and for good reason agreed that it was a bad idea. The reality is we should have term limits and it should be at the ballot box. And it shouldn't be an arbitrary figure. The reality is the way Sacramento works, if you're a member of the California State Legislature and the Assembly, in your first 2 years, you barely figure out the job. Your second 2 years are your most effective.
And your speaker.
And if you think
about it, the speaker of the Assembly is in her second term.
You're chairing committees as a freshman member of the legislature. You don't even know what you're doing. You have no idea what the history of that committee is, and you're chairing those committees. And then in your last 2 years, you're a lame duck. No one wants to talk to you.
And looking for your next office.
And looking for your next office. How does that make you effective?
Well, let me ask you though, you are a member of the Republican caucus, and I think it's fair to say that most members of your caucus have been supportive of term limits. So, are you able to push a term limit reform initiative without your caucus jumping down your throat?
All I can tell you is that I very much care for my caucus. I love my party, but I am an independent thinker, and I believe very firmly what I believe, and that is that term limits has not served California well. I think it's a bad idea, and I think it has done the disservice to California at large.
I got to say, I mean, as a neutral observer, it does seem that even members of the Republican caucus are realizing that it's just not working. You know, maybe a term limit of 12 years, 6, whatever it is, but 6 years is a real tricky
Well, and that's a great point too, Brad, because historically, most members who served prior to term limits actually tended to serve just on the natural about 12 years and then often went and found other work. But I think 6 years is such a compressed time, it's almost impossible to get anything meaningful done. And worse, the special interests absolutely rule Sacramento because they're the only ones with any clout or any institutional knowledge.
And it is amazing that one of the reasons why term limits was put into place was to kind of minimize that power of the the fifth estate or third or whatever it is, and yet, or is that the press, but whatever it is. But yes, I mean, there's no doubt that lobbyists do have a lot of power, objectively speaking. Okay, so reform measures are popular these days. A lot of you are carrying them, but are they popular enough to get out of the legislature onto the governor's desk and signed?
I think regardless of how, quote, popular they are, we need to quit looking at what's popular and what's right. Sacramento needs people who are concerned about doing what's the right thing to do. And if they're just going to put their finger in the air and figure out which way the winds are blowing, that's not good enough. California deserves better than that.
But that being said, you know, maybe popular was the wrong word. Are they going to move forward, and are they going to actually become law?
Well, I'm proud to say that we have actually, over the last 2 budget cycles, the February budget and this June revision, we have actually seen massive reforms take place. Just in this budget cycle alone, the adjustment, we saw reforms to IHSS, we saw reforms to welfare, the in-home supportive services. We saw reforms to the CalWorks, which is our welfare system. Major reforms to try to weed out abuse and fraud and try to make the systems actually work better. And you saw massive reforms occurring in education in February. We're doing some really positive things in terms of reforms. They don't get as much play, but it's happening, and I'm proud of that work.
Okay, Anthony Adams, please come back. We'd love to have you on again.
Thanks so much.
You bet. For Charter's Local Edition, my name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you for joining us. Now we're going to send you back to CNN Headline News.
Hi everybody, it's Peter Dills, host of The Chef Knows, getting ready to go on the road again. I have an invitation for you to join me on Charter Communications Video on Demand. I explore the very best in food and drink that Southern California has to offer. You'll discover in each program a variety of different restaurants to fit everyone's budget, and even get tips on tipping. Plus, you'll never know who we're going to run into when you watch The Chef Knows. So join me on Charter Communications Video on Demand for a wining and dining restaurant experience.